Hi everyone, my name is Anna Scanlon and I am a professional writer. I write web content and I also write young adult novels. And I've also been involved in theater since I was very little. Um, the arts have always played a huge part in my life. When I was little, I loved to put on my parents' records like Annie, Sound of Music, Mary Poppins, Cabaret, and I would dance around the living room, and it was just always fun for me to pretend to be someone else. And when I was 7, I worked up the courage to be in my first play, and I continued doing plays 2 or 3 a year until I was maybe 20, I guess, was my last play that I performed in, but I continued being involved in theater behind the scenes. I've written a couple of plays, and I have worked with other people on plays, and I hope to continue doing that because I think the arts are an important way for people to be educated on different topics. As far as writing goes, my writing didn't really become a source of income until I was diagnosed with lupus SLE. I have written my whole life. I always loved reading. I was one of those kids that would go to the library and come out with, a whole mountain of books, and they would always be like, "Oh, are you doing a report?" And I'd be like, "No, I'm just reading for fun." And so I was always one of those kids, and I look back on it and I wrote stories from a young age, and I think that some people are just natural born writers. Not to say that they're like better than other people who have picked it up as a hobby, but I definitely was one of those people who was born into it. Um, when we studied the Oregon Trail in school, I wanted to write a novel about going on the Oregon Trail. And when I read Anne Frank, I wanted to write my own diary about my life. And I loved, reading books, and I liked to imagine what it was like for to live in different worlds, like to live on the prairie or things like that. And of course, as a young child, I didn't really have the full oeuvre of what it would be like, but I was still putting myself in someone else's shoes, and um, just thinking about in terms of like what it would be like to be somebody else. And I think that that is so great about the arts, because the arts are a way for you to open up your mind and challenge you and challenge other people to think about the way their point of view, and maybe that they can spend an hour and a half or the time it takes to read a book or the time it takes to see a movie looking at something from someone else's perspective, and so maybe it can open their mind a little bit, which I think is really fantastic. And the arts also, I think, I love history, and I will be next year a PhD candidate talking about history and mass media. And I think that history, my love of the arts, has, kept my love of history going, because I loved seeing shows like Ragtime and things like that that really talk about different historical perspectives, but they put it in like a fun way, so it's not necessarily where you're like reading out of a book and you're like, "Oh my gosh, this is so boring," but it's entertaining and you connect with the characters, and then you in turn are becoming connected with your country or the world's past, which I think is phenomenal. And I think that film and the arts and paintings and things like that really help you put yourself in someone else's shoes. And if you think about it, arts are always the first thing to be, banned. God, I'm blanking on the word. Banned or filtered, I guess is what I want to say. They're the first things to be banned or edited, I guess, when a fascist government takes control, because they realize that art is a way for people to think beyond their own four walls. And and I don't think that that's something that should be relegated only to people who are healthy. And I didn't experience having a chronic illness as a teenager, but I did experience it as a young adult. And I do know that it can severely limit your access to the arts. It can be difficult to perform if you aren't feeling well, as I haven't really performed in a full-length production since I came down with lupus, but I have been able to be involved in other ways. But as I say, it can, having a disease is time consuming, and it's also very monetarily consuming. So it's it can be hard for kids to be able to participate in lessons, things like that, because they might miss it or because it's too expensive, or, seeing a Broadway show or a tour or something like that can be also economically cumbersome. So I really support Choir Stars, and I think that it's a great organization to help bring the arts to kids, because I think that the arts are just a way for everyone to be able to express themselves, and for people to be able to look at life through somebody else, through another person's lens, for an hour or 2 hours, or for the time it takes to read the book. So that's why I support Choir Stars, and I think you should too.